Consideration of resolutions. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 014?
Senate Joint Resolution 14 by Senators Coleman and Representative Exum concerning the recognition of Alpha Day in remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 21014 and ask to be read at length.
Will the clerk please read the resolution at length?
Senate Joint Resolution 14 by Senator Coleman and Representative Exum concerning the recognition of Alpha Day in remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Whereas on April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. was killed by a sniper in Memphis, Tennessee, and whereas Dr. King was an icon and a Baptist minister who led the civil rights movement in the United States from the mid-1950s until his death, and whereas Dr. King's efforts, nonviolent tactics, and leadership led to the Montgomery bus boycott and the founding of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which helped end legal segregation of African Americans in the South and other parts of the United States. And whereas Dr. King's leadership led to the massive March on Washington and the passing of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And whereas since his death, the legacy, message, and contributions of Dr. King have not only been recognized in America, but worldwide, so much so that a federal holiday honors him, as well as monuments, streets, murals, and stamps that bear his name and image. And whereas Iota Omicron Lambda and Delta Psi Lambda chapter of Alpha Psi Alpha Fraternity, Inc., proudly recognize and support the legacy of their fraternity brother, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, hereby officially proclaim April 4th, 2021 as Alpha Day at the Capitol in remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to each of the 4 chapters of Alpha Phi Alpha, Inc. in the Western region.
Is there any discussion? Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, feel free to take your seats if you like. Like anybody, I would like to have a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. On the eve of his assassination, Dr. King spoke prophetically about life, longevity, and his personal longing to do God's will, no matter his length of life. His concern for longevity was eclipsed by his commitment to living out the purpose that he believed God had given him. To his final breath, Dr. King never wavered in his commitment to his God purpose. Until his final breath, he was standing with and standing for those who were being intentionally excluded and living under the weight of unjust structures and systems. On April 4th, 1968, those structures, systems, and the supremacy ideology that propped them up snatched the life of Dr. King from his family, his community, and the larger civil rights movement that he had given himself to. The taking of his life caused a grief within his family and our larger community that still today feels fresh as we consider what could have been and what should have been. At the young age of 39, the dreamer was shot down, taken from us while standing for us in Memphis. Today we stand with his fraternity brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha, and we honor his life and the great personal sacrifice that he made to lay down his life for a friend. Today we stand with his fraternity brothers to acknowledge this moment in history, our present hurt, and our future hopes. Today we stand with his fraternity brothers to honor this day as Alpha Day at the Colorado State Capitol. May your presence here today and this resolution remind us to continue to work forward together to fulfill the dream of your great brother, a drum major for justice, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Thank you, members. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Fields.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues. 53 years ago, this past Sunday, was the assassination of Martin Luther King, Jr. And when I think about his life and his legacy, I think about his tone and his message as it related to nonviolence. And I think we need to continue that belief and that tone and consider all things that we do in peace. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this resolution.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I stand with the Phi Alphas fraternity. It's so wonderful to see you here today, my brothers. I am a sister through Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. It's called the Divine Nine Fraternities and Sororities. I will never forget the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated. I was in college, Ball State University, and when I was walking back to my dorm, the word started spreading. It was shocking because in my lifetime, he was an icon. And the reason so many of us were so devastated because he was only 39 years old. And he was a peacemaker. He was a peacemaker. So on this day, I am really blessed to be able to tell you how much Martin Luther King meant to me. I keep thinking about what could have been, but I have hope that what could have been will happen in my lifetime. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, the good senator, my friend, for bringing the resolution. Because I'll have this and one more opportunity next year to stand at this podium. I've shared some of this before, but I'd like to share not about me, but about my mom and the influence that she had on my life and the influence that Dr. King had on her. I've shared before that my first memory as a child happened before I was 3 years old, and that was the day I was in the grocery store in Glenwood Springs, and the ladies in the grocery store started screaming. That was when they heard about John F. Kennedy being shot in Dallas, Texas. I don't remember President Kennedy, but I do remember the terror of that moment. My family lived in Juneau, Alaska in 1968, so news came to us slowly. That was a very remote place then. So I don't claim to remember the day that Dr. King was assassinated, but I do remember conversations that followed that. And I remember asking my mom, who was really my mentor, my teacher at the time, why would someone kill Dr. King? Why would they shoot him? And she explained to a then 7-year-old boy, trying to understand in fairly simple terms, that he was killed because of what he believed in, and the words that he spoke, and the inspiration that he had for so many. I'm so grateful for this resolution, and we recognize Martin Luther King Day, because I remember as a child the influence that Dr. King had on my mom, and in turn, on me. I've said before in this chamber, I think in opening day, especially speeches on opening day, I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve with you and to learn from your perspective, your stories, your unique place in this world. I don't claim to be right. I don't claim to have the answer always, but I am grateful to Dr. King, I'm grateful to my mom, and I'm grateful to all of you for helping me to understand different perspectives on the world. And while Dr. King was certainly a great man and changed this nation and the world, and we remember him rightly, it's those individual changes, influences that he made in the lives of people back in the 1960s. Leading up to April 4th, 1968. And while I was only 7 years old, I'm sure grateful to have learned from his influence. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for bringing the resolution.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 014. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 014 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on Senate Joint Resolution 014.